We're going to jump on over to the main stage, and this is the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Raids panel. Corey Stockton on stage.
Something else to do in these dungeons. We've got so many awesome dungeons, and there's lots of different ways to play them, but some people are looking for a greater challenge in them. Maybe they want to try to do something different. And so we're just looking to give players an opportunity of a different thing to do. And it works great to do it within the dungeons because we have so much content there to come up with a new mode for players to play them in. Essentially, what a challenge mode is doing a dungeon on a timed run. So similar to the runs we used to have back in the day, where people could go in and do a timed run specifically on a Stratholme is a great example of the 45-minute Baron run, something like that. But we wanted to take that and just turn that into a whole entire mode where that's what the whole concept is. So you're going to be able to go into a dungeon, timer starts, and then see how quick you can finish it. And then we'll have specific times set up that would give you a bronze, silver, and a gold medal. And depending on how quick you can finish it, you can earn that medal. And that would work for all the dungeons across the board. We're liking to do as many as we can. We're going to obviously start with Pandaria, and then if there's dungeons that it would work, obviously Scholomance could be one that this could work with, or Scarlet Monastery. But we're going to start with the Pandaria dungeons. So it really gives people something they could do with their guildies, they could do it with friends, but we also want to have it work through the Dungeon Finder tool. So we're looking into just having an option to queue specifically for challenge mode, and you would only queue in with other people that want to do this mode. Another huge note about challenge mode is that we're using normalized gear. It's a huge deal here. So essentially everyone that's in here is going to have the exact same item level of their gear. So it really means that it's a skill-based exercise and not just based on how good your gear is. And it's really great because it means this content's going to last for so much longer because we can normalize that gear. So later on, you might have some raid gear and come back and try to do a dungeon and think you're going to blow it out of the water, but you're actually going to be on the exact same playing field as another guy who might just have, heroic gear rather than raid gear. Now, what we're talking about for the rewards for this is really, really awesome looking gear that you can use for transmog. Obviously, we're saying you're going to get Valor for doing this. Like, part of our philosophy is that people should be able to do whatever they want to advance their character. So, you'll be able to do challenge modes if you like that and still earn Valor. But we really love the idea of getting unique art for this that, you can show off. A big part of this is bragging rights and leaderboards. So, if you can only get that gear here, you can transmog your tier 14 shoulders into the gear that you got specifically out of challenge mode. Now, like I mentioned, leaderboards will be a huge part of this. The concept that you could take, your time and compare it against your BattleNet friends list, or you could take your time and compare it specifically against your guildies, and find out who got through which dungeon the fastest, what medals have you earned. There's a number of ways that you can compare to other people. You can look at their gear and know right away if they've been able to get the gold medal in this specific dungeon. So we've got a couple mock-ups of what the UI is going to look like for this. So on the left there, you can see the challenges screen, and you can see the gold, silvers, and bronze medals that a guy has gotten. You can see what his best time is in a dungeon. You can see who he ran it with. There's a lot of different things of information you can get out of this one screen. On the right side, that's a leaderboard. So you can imagine that being in the guild system where you have the drop-down and you can pick to compare by achievement points or by different things, by your guild XP. There's going to be an option to compare by challenge mode. And then you can see, who's gone up in the leaderboard. That's what the little green arrow is. And you can see the gold medal or the silver medal that they earned for that specific run. This is a look at what would happen when you finish the dungeon. Same thing in the roster. If you click one specific guy, you could see, what has he done? What is his profile? Kind of just like looking at inspecting someone and finding out, what's the fastest time they've got? What dungeon are they the best at? And then maybe you guys could decide that you want to get together and run another dungeon the same way. This is just a mock-up of one of the big things about this is when you succeed really well, we really want you to feel awesome. So the guys mocked up something like this. Imagine you win, you get an awesome background sound, and you get this super cool screen telling you that you just did, you got the gold medal, you beat this dungeon as much as you can. Now take this group and maybe try to hit another dungeon and see if you can get that gold medal somewhere else. And next up, raids.
All right. So, raids in Mists of Pandaria. We're going to have 3 of them. We really liked how the Cataclysm raids on ship worked, where you had 2 raids of around 5 to 6 bosses and a third one with a couple bosses. It really, we got multiple end bosses out of that. We got, multiple times during a week you would get that really nice, exhilarating feeling of, yeah, I beat this entire raid. So we really like that, and we're going to go with that kind of philosophy again. The raids are going to feature predominantly 2 of our new enemy races, the Mogu and the Mantid. And we have some screenshots of what they're going to look like. Oh, in a little bit. And also, all of these raids are going to have Raid Finder, Normal, and Heroic difficulties. We'll talk about Raid Finder a little bit more in depth. The Raid Finder is the new difficulty that we're adding in 4.3 for Dragon Soul. It will be in every single raid in Mist of Pandaria as well. So here's one of the Mantid. This is an early look at what they might look like. And again, there will be different types of Mantid. We'll talk about Mantids with wings, much larger Mantid that would act as tanks. And then we have a look at the Mogu. These really huge, beefy guys, but also very mystical. They're a very magical race. So the first raid we're going to look at here would be Mogushan Palace. It's located at the top Kunlai Summits, which is in the center of Pandaria, and it's our 6-boss raid. And inside that, you'll actually go in and explore the hidden secrets of the ancient Mogu Empire. Mogushan Palace has actually been locked away. Most of its secrets, even the Pandarians, don't go into this place. It's all been locked away. The Mogu the Mogu Empire was actually before the Pandarian Empire. It's very ancient, lots of old secrets. You'll go in there and discover all of them. So here we'll show you a layout that's actually already changed. We're iterating all the time, folks. So you can see this is actually a boss. This is a layout that actually has 5 bosses. You would start on the right, head over to the left, go down. And while we don't have a really cool video to show because it's still in production, we do have some awesome concepts to show off for you. This is one of the rooms where you'll go along. This is actually, we'll have a boss probably in front of this right here. This is this crazy library where these huge scrolls are along the wall, with ancient Mogu scripts. You can see over in the far bottom right corner, you can actually see the scale of what you would look like. So this place is huge. I have this another beautiful concept of this entryway, this grand entrance into the temple, and it's just gorgeous. We're really looking forward to spawning, making creatures for this, really giving you guys a lot of fun with the raids. So Raid Finder.
So what is Raid Finder? We've talked a lot about Raid Finder for patch 4.3, but we thought we'd give you guys a little bit more details since we're here talking specifically on dungeons and raids. Essentially, the concept came up from what we did with Dungeon Finder and being able to see how successful that's been with getting a lot more players into the dungeon content that we build. What we've found with raids, though, is that we aren't seeing as wide of an audience as we would like in our raid content. We spend a lot of time on the raid content, and it's also just got some of our coolest fights, some of our best creatures, and we really feel like everyone should have a chance to see that content. It's one of the main reasons we decided to get it in with patch 4.3 instead of waiting until Mist of Pandaria, because being able to fight Deathwing in the Dragon Soul raid, we just thought, what better place to put it in so that as many people as possible could get a chance to experience that fight and be able to finally put down Deathwing for good. Now, what we're doing with it specifically is a lower difficulty level than normal difficulty. And that doesn't mean that we're just going to go in and tune the hit points down a little bit, and we're going to go in and tune their damage down, 20 or 30%. Instead, we're actually going to go in and look at the mechanics, see how complicated they feel, talk about could a group of 25 people that haven't played together before be able to figure this out, and actually build something that works for them. If we took the shortcut route about just, literally just changing numbers, that's still not going to tune down the complexity of the fight. Yes, it might make it easier, but you're not going to know why you beat it. You're not going to actually pick up on those mechanics. So we're actually going to go in and make sure that these fights feel right for this difficulty level. Like I mentioned, this is going to be in patch 4.3 with Dragon Soul, but in 5.0, Mist of Pandaria, it's actually going to be for every single dungeon on launch. So it's really going to be cool because starting out early on in the expansion, so many people are going to have more access to more content. They're not necessarily going to be done when you finish, heroic dungeons, and maybe you've done challenge modes, and now you feel like you're ready, but you don't necessarily have a group to raid with. Being able to use Raid Finder is a way to get in really quickly. Now, on the opposite side for Raid Finder, we've also made sure that the loot and the rewards that you get from it feel appropriate to that level of player that's doing it. So, for instance, you're not going to be able to get vanity items out of the normal Raid Finder, things like mounts that would drop off the final boss. We keep those in normal or heroic. Things like achievements for specific bosses are going to end up staying in the normal and heroic. We will have an achievement that says you've done Raid Finder, but that would probably be it. And then all the rest of our achievements would end up staying in the normal and heroic modes. So that, there's a lot of people that play those modes, and they take a lot of pride in the fact that they can finish that content. And we think that's awesome. We want that to still exist. But we also want to be able to open that content up to more people, and that's where Raid Finder slots in. So we've got a couple mock-ups of how this would look. We've been talking a lot about how to get people more motivated to do raids. So we thought, along with Valor Points, a side of fries would be sweet.
So tasty.
So this is it's going to look very much like Dungeon Finder that you see now. You're going to be able to open it up, pick your role, and queue up for it. And one really important point about Raid Finder is that it works for 25-player raids, not for 10-player. And we did that specifically because it's going to be so much better queue times if we do 25, because we can fill it with 17 DPS versus in a 10-man where we use a much smaller number, and the queue times would just be way bigger. So 25-player raids end up working much better for Raid Finder than 10-player. And now Scott's going to hit on some of the goals we have for the expansion as a whole.
Okay. So one of the things we're really trying to do with Mists of Pandaria this time is keep the experiences short and focused. A few of the dungeons in Cataclysm actually got away from us. Hall's Origination had 7 bosses. That takes a while to get through. Dead Mines had 6 bosses. That took a long time to get through. We actually had to go back in and hotfix some of the trash out to try to keep it a bit more focused. Because, again, we want you to be able to not just make it so where at the end, for a night you're like, oh, I'll do a dungeon. These things should be short enough so you actually want to do a couple dungeons, or a dungeon plus some dailies, a dungeon plus some pet battles, a dungeon plus some battlegrounds. Trying to keep these short and focused will give you more opportunity to do more things inside our game, and we think that's very, very important. Another one that we're going to talk about together is need to make the encounters understandable so we don't set up groups to fail. We released Dungeon Journal. One of the main reasons for that was trying to make it so where you get into a group, you're going along, you get into a boss fight, all of a sudden you're all dead, and you're like, what just happened? And then the healer gets blamed, and then afterwards you're like, oh, I guess I can look in Dungeon Journal and see what's happening there. The Dungeon Journal is great for that, but what we really need to do as designers is make sure is that visually you understand what's going on, that we telegraph these abilities so you aren't, out of the blue hit by something really deadly. It's something we're really going to try to focus on, making all of the encounters super understandable. Because I just mentioned how bad it was if you don't understand why you all died or why you all failed. It's almost just as bad if you go into an encounter, go in, everyone goes, all right, we'll just got this, and you go in, you fight, and you win, you're like, well, what just happened? I don't know, but we won. Okay, that's pretty bad too, because that means you didn't actually understand what the game mechanics were. There wasn't any enough gameplay there. We put in abilities that, hey, if there's a big damage spike for a tank, use your shield wall type ability. Things like that. If you can just ignore those kinds of things, then, and if you don't understand them, that makes for not as much fun. And that's what we're really trying to hit for, is upping the fun quotient of the dungeons. Another thing we're really talking about is flexing our creative kung fu. This expansion is awesome for us. We've been over the last few expansions, we've had these really heavy dark themes when you think about it. You've gone up to Northrend, to stop the Scourge and the Lich King. The Cataclysm just happened, and now you're killing Deathwing in 4.3. Here in Mists of Pandaria, you saw one of the dungeons earlier, you're trying to make sure the beer doesn't stop. This is amazing. It's a little bit more lighthearted, it's a little bit more friendly, and also it allows us to, there's all these cultures and things, we're all super geeks, kung fu movies, Asian culture, anime, all these things that, all of a sudden it's we can dragon punch people and wow? awesome.
We can.
So you'll get dragon punched and all other kinds of like crazy moves, flying guillotines, I'm sure, all kinds of new stuff. It's really exciting us as designers to work on this. And I think you'll really see, when you guys finally get your hands on this, all that, tender loving care. And another interesting thing, so the 3 dungeons you've seen before, something that's actually really cool about them that we're doing with these is they're actually in the world at a 1-to-1 scale. A lot of our dungeons are actually just holes in the wall, and then behind that hole, time and space sort of changes, and if you actually walk the same distance inside the dungeon that you walked outside, you go through a mountain or something. These places are all actually in the world, which opens up a ton of really cool things. Our quest designers are super excited about being able to send you into these dungeons. And you can see here, this is the J Temple. Again, that's actually in the world. It's gorgeous. We're giving you a chance to see it. Like Corey was talking about, the indoor-outdoor dungeons really feel amazing. Again, going to that more lighthearted feel. If you can see the sun, that's amazing. Some of our dungeons before have been very dark, very heavy themes, while so many of these are, just gorgeous. So now, thanks for listening. Of course, we would not be here without all of you. And now, it's our time to listen to you guys. So we'll go to the Q&A.
Time for Q&A.
There's a line happening somewhere there.
I think it's here. There it is.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Okay, so we don't have anybody here to help us. So, you guys, we're going to take a line right here. Jesse, who's got his hand up here, is going to beginning of the line. We're taking questions about dungeons and raids. So if we have somebody already, come on up. Are you ready? Let's go.
Let's do this.
We almost have a whole half hour.
Who do we got? Come on up. Come on up. Stand right here.
The challenge modes, you said gear would scale when you're in there. Does it scale up as well as down?
Currently, we're planning for it to scale down. Although we have talked about possibly, instead of doing that, we could also just scale all of the monsters' power up. So instead of, because we've been worried that maybe just scaling the gear down might make people feel less powerful because it's going down. So an alternative to that would be just scaling all the monsters up and then having the gear level be higher. So there's still a little bit of give and take on that.
No problem. Next one. Who's got one? There you go. Step up. There we go. This guy's ready.
Regarding the Dungeon Finder and Raid Finder,
Right.
Are we going to be able to enter a random queue for possibly Burning Crusade raids and Wrath of the Lich King and stuff like that?
Currently,
we've talked about it a little bit. One of the things we're concerned about is there actually going to be enough people to fill that queue? How many people, if a lot of people, when they go back into those old raids, it's specifically because they're looking for transmog gear now. They're trying to get achievements with their friends, for their guilds or whatever. So we're not sure if necessarily random raid or Raid Finder is a fit for those kinds of cases. We'll see. Raid Finder, certainly, once we really, debut it in 4.3, see how it works, improve it for 5.0. In the future, we certainly could do that kind of thing.
yeah, it's not off the table. It's just a question of would we have enough people in the queue to make it work.
Thank you. All right, come on up.
Hey,
You were talking about how the dungeons are now visible in the outside world, but as far as I remember, in Burning Crusade there were a lot of examples where they were. Why did you decide to actually forget about it in this expansion, but actually going back to it? What made you forget?
over time, we've had dungeons that have existed in the outdoor world before. You could imagine players that went to Scarlet Monastery had always seen it in the world. It's just one of those things that we didn't focus on all the time. And there's a secondary thing to it that you're not really going to see until you're actually playing. But for example, the Storm Stout Brewery since it exists in the outdoor world, the quest guys have actually quested up all the area around it, but they're also using the dungeon itself for quests on the inside. So there's actually some quests where you can actually go inside the dungeon and have to see some of the bosses that you're going to fight in the dungeon, but you interact with them on a quest basis solo. So it's really opened up a lot of new gameplay opportunities for the quest guys, as well as just the fact that it really has a sense of place in the world.
Yeah, and there have been a few that have been like that. Zul'Farrak was one like that, but when you actually see the scale of these inside the game, it's really super impressive. They really make the zones come alive, seeing this really huge focal point for.
Historically, we've had to scale them to be smaller, so here they're at a 1-to-1 scale, so they actually have an awesome impact on the zones.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Come on up.
Hi. Given the increased focus on doing multiple things, are we going to be able to do quests in a raid group?
That's a great question. Really, there's not a lot of reasons why we don't allow that other than the fact that we don't want a large number of people able to beat certain quest mechanics. But now with the advent of scenarios and the fact that our group quests might end up moving towards scenarios, it might not be as much of an issue.
I think we might be pulling that for 4.3.
Yeah.
I'll have to check. We talked about that recently.
Yeah, it's definitely been talked about.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, come on up. Say Blues Brother.
That's right. I have a question about the kick process. Usually in some groups, you try to kick somebody for being stupid, and it says a 3-hour wait period. When most 5-mans are 10 to 20 minutes long, or maybe an hour long.
We have an internal algorithm, I guess you could call it, that works for our kicking, and it actually keeps track of the number of times you've kicked someone, how long, how many times that person has been kicked, and it actually modifies that number dynamically based on kind of the history of your kicking. So we can kind of know, are you excessively kicking people for no reason, or are you the kind of person that, you come across someone occasionally and then they'll get kicked right away? But that's essentially what you're seeing, is that algorithm working, trying to help the fact that, someone doesn't get kicked that doesn't necessarily deserve it. That's essentially, we're just trying to have that system feel as best as we can. Because we want to allow people to kick, but we don't want people to be kicked for no reason.
Yeah, we want people to be kicked.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, we want people to be kicked for the right reason and not for the lulls.
Mm-hmm. All right, come on up.
At the Cataclysm Lost, you talked about having the 3 raids as well and like 13 bosses in the tier, and you're talking about doing that for Missa Pandaria as well. Yeah. But then in the later patches of Cataclysm, like 4.2 and 4.3, you're down to 7 and 8 bosses respectively. Is that just the nature of patches, or do you plan on having bigger tiers in the patches of Pandaria as well?
We haven't actually we haven't finalized what the tier plan will be for all the launch raids. For example, we don't know if we're going to have 2 tiers and split those up, or if they're actually going to be combined into 1 tier. A lot of that comes into how we're going to actually, get loot to the players. A lot of what we're talking about here today is that there's so many other ways to get loot, so we have to make sure that the loot we give out in the raids matches up with all the other ways that we're allowing you to get items in the game. So a lot of that's just, we still haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In Cataclysm, there is a very steep jump in difficulty between level 85 normals and 85 heroics, which was great, but the side effect of that was that at the 85 normals, there was only the 2-3 that you end up running over and over and over again, and it was quickly tiresome. How are you going to handle that for Pandarian? Will there be more level 90 normals, or the sort of same 2-3 then jump to the heroics?
We're currently not planning to have level 90 normal dungeons at all in Mists of Pandaria. We're planning to have the level up dungeons, and then heroics, and then challenge modes is the way you would see that flowing as far as if your progression of content. Because of challenge modes, the normal and our heroics would be at a little bit of a lower difficulty level than what you saw in Cataclysm, because people that are looking for that extra level of difficulty could do the challenge modes.
Yeah, it's as you noted, there wasn't really enough content to support a full tier with level 85 normals. and looking at Mists of Pandaria, we didn't feel like there was. We'd rather like spend our time working on the heroics, making that tier like super awesome, making the level ups really amazing, and just we couldn't really make that one super awesome, so we just decided to cut it.
They're in this weird middle ground, so it's hard to make them feel as awesome as a heroic or a level up.
Right side of the road, okay. Left side of the road, okay. In the middle, squish like crave. That's what happened with those normals.
Thank you. All right, come on.
Hi, my question's about hard mode toggling. Ulduar was the first hard mode. You guys said that was cool, but you had to go to the internet to figure out how to push a button and make Memoron mad. You went to on-off toggle. Last year you guys said you didn't like it, to go to the internet, but now the Dungeons rolls in. Can we go back to maybe having Sartharian bring drakes, or leaving the trees up in Freya's room activate additional abilities? That was kind of more fun than turn on hard mode, have more health, do more damage.
That's something. Those were, like you said, those were really fun. The idea that you could sort of like choose, effectively multiple difficulties for the fight, I think was pretty compelling. But as you noted, in the end, it was very difficult to come up with that kind of mechanic for every single boss. Like, it worked out great with Freya because she had, the sub-bosses with her. It worked out great with, the Iron Council because there was 3 of them, and which order it made sense. Well, which order you did it in. But then you had bosses, and Memoron was awesome. Like, if we could do another boss where a big red button made him angry, I'm totally down for that. Big red buttons, total win in my book. But there was others. The Frost one where it was very hidden. It was like, did you do it in time? Okay. And that's really all there was to it. So we really we can make these more consistent with a toggle, with a normal heroic toggle. It makes it more understandable to the players. There's a lot of weirdness that went on where it's like, oh, we're going to try for normal, but they're like, oh, we kind of screwed up, so let's stop this. We're not. So it's much clearer, and that's what I think. When we're talking about the goals, making things understandable is a very important thing for all players.
Thank you.
My question is about the legendary items. Right now, you guys currently randomly choose the legendary to a class that hasn't gotten one for a while. But why can't you make a universal legendary quest chain that guilds can give the item to the most dedicated raider that deserves it at the time? So one guild may give it to their healer, another guild may give it to their tank or melee DPS, but they all have different abilities.
We could do something like that, but I think you lose the luster of the fact that anyone could get it at that point. What we like about what we have now is you build a lot of build-up around that one legendary. Rogues are about to get the next legendary now. And they've been waiting a long time to get their legendary, right? And we can design, what's really cool about it is the quest line to get it has all this specific rogue gameplay. You're sneaking around, you're pickpocketing, you're using rogue abilities all over the place specifically for it. So I think for us it really feels like making sure that it's for one specific type of gameplay, like a class, makes it really feel right. And so that's what we did here. I mean, we could definitely open it up, but I think it would lose some of that luster, some of that exclusivity.
Yeah, you want unique and awesome or generic and mushy? We go with unique and awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
It's a cool idea, though.
The 1025 lockout has been frustrating for me because it's basically made my alt spec a dead spec for current tier. I know the raid finder is going to help and give me something to do, so if I have a main spec of a tank, my alt spec is healer, I can't do the same current content as a healer. The raid finder, can we join that as a group with our guild, and is the content going to be satisfying enough?
You can definitely join as a group in raid finder, and I believe we have no lockout on...
Yeah,
we have no lockout on raid finder.
There's no lockout, but you can only get loot once a week per boss, so it's a little bit different. But you can totally do your normal mode or heroic mode raid, and with the same character go into raid finder and get loot from there and have a fun time. As far as will it be satisfying for you? we're trying to make all of the encounters, super fun, regardless of which difficulty you're playing it at. So I think there'll be something regardless of what difficulty you.
And just the general concept of 1025 and having the lockout be unified is something we always talk about. I mean, when we made that change originally. And so we've still got a ways to go, but, we're always trying to figure out what's going to work best for the players at this time. So, that's not completely out of the picture.
Right. So it might go back.
You never know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right up, right there.
Hi, I was wondering about just like for Cataclysm, there was like 3 raids that came in like straight from the expansion, and right after that we had Firelands, and it was only like 7 bosses compared to the 12 we had before, or 13 if you want to do heroic. But so I was just wondering, like, have you guys thought about maybe like some way to make it seem like this, so it's not overwhelming in like the initial part of it with 3 raid dungeons and then just 7 bosses in there? That seems a little like you're too focused on one raid for a long period of time, and one, it's like 2 sides of a spectrum. Is there going to be like a middle in the next expansion or something?
Right now, we're talking about having 6, 5, and 5. I think
6, 5, and 2.
Yeah, 6, 5, and 2. So something pretty similar, like 14 bosses on launch in the same way. But we're still not sure how many of the world raid bosses we want to do that are going to be in the exterior world. So we're going to have raid bosses like that as well. But definitely we want that to not feel like it's such a big jump, all the time, where maybe one time you get 7, then you get 13, then you get 5. Essentially the number of bosses comes down to, we need to have enough bosses to distribute loot correctly. There's kind of a minimum number we have to make sure that we can spread the loot around. But other than that, it just comes down to the time of us being able to get a patch out with the number of bosses that we think feels right for that zone.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, hi. I would like to ask a question about the classic dungeons to see if there was ever going to be another one, kind of like heroic stockades, like Hogger. Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
It might be like in the future, like via patch, we might do more classics, like we did Zul'Aman and Zul'Barub and patches. They're a lot of fun to do for us. They're really well received by the community.
We love doing those.
Right. Everyone loves Hogger. We'll see.
A cool fact, actually, originally, Dead Mines and Shadowfang Keep were supposed to be for patch 4.1. They weren't even originally in launch. And all of a sudden, the dev team thought it was so awesome.
Yeah.
We were just like, no, we've got to get these in for launch because they're just too cool. So I think it just, that's the kind of thing, whenever we have time, if we can get one in and it feels like it's going to fit, it's something we want to do.
Thank you.
Hello. So when you guys announced 4.3, you announced that there was only going to be 7 bosses, but that you were going to focus a lot more on making sure that the bosses felt more epic and more, that you put more work into them.
Right.
And I know this is just my opinion, but I didn't really feel like the bosses were anything special. And so when it came down to it, Firelands really only felt like half a raid. And then with the 4.3 is already on the test realms, it felt like you guys kind of felt like we need to push this next patch out right away, so let's nerf all these bosses so guilds can get through it and we can push out the next patch. And I didn't really like that, so I was just wondering, is this something we can expect to see in the next, raid tiering in Mists of Pandaria?
That's certainly not the reason why those bosses were nerfed at all. It doesn't have anything to do with timeline. It has everything to do with we want as many people as possible to experience that content. So we were looking at the number of people that were getting kills on the raid bosses, and it was extremely small. And for all the work that everyone puts into something like that, that's why we did the hotfixes right away instead of waiting, because we want to get that content to as many people as possible. And that's definitely why you saw that. So really the issue there is us probably over-tuning those bosses to begin with, and that might come off a different way, but it's certainly not about us trying to rush and get to the next content and making sure guilds are ready.
Yeah, and the 4.3 raids, the Death of Wing stuff, extremely epic. It'll be you guys haven't seen the Corrupted Deathwing fight on PTR yet, but when you guys do, you'll be blown away.
Thank you. That's what. Oh.
Thank you for making a fantastic game.
Thanks.
All right, come on up.
For competitive raiders, have you thought about separating the difference between 10 and 25, since there's a difficulty difference? and the way that it's set up for server-first achievements?
We've discussed it.
Yeah.
That's certainly something. There are some differences between 10 and 25, like difficulties on heroic. It depends on, for some raids, the 10s were harder. Like some of the initial, Cataclysm raids, some of those 10 heroics were really, really hard. And vice versa. In Firelands, the 25 ones ended up being harder. It's hard for us to. It's difficult to actually keep those perfectly balanced. There's usually one that's like a little bit easier than others. So that's something we've talked about, and can't make any promises, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, so you were talking how challenge modes can be done for dungeons. Are they also going to be for raids? And also, are they all going to be unlocked immediately? Or is it going to be like you have to do 10 to unlock the next tier and then 15 to do the next tier, things like that?
There's a chance we could do them for raids. We want to start with dungeons and see how they work out and see if they're popular and get a chance to tune them and have them feel right. Raids aren't out of the picture. As far as the unlocking, there's one thing we didn't really mention, but we've been talking about, like, once you get, like, say you get the gold medal, right? After that, we've talked about then actually the item level of your gear could get nerfed by, like, say 5%. And then you could have a chance to run it again, almost like a prestige mode kind of thing, right? And if you beat that, then we could drop your gear by 10% and then 15%. So not only would there just be those 3 levels, you could kind of keep going depending on your skill level. That's another way that we could possibly unlock so you could do more. We just kind of haven't finalized that yet, to be honest.
Thank you.
I feel like one of the strengths of being able to have 2 raids on a single tier usually comes with giving the raiders a choice as to how they will progress through content. Right. Like they can choose, we want to focus on this string of bosses to get to the end at the beginning of this week, or we can focus on this string of bosses to get to the end this week. Whereas a single raid can seem to burden you toward getting to the end at times. Have you considered maybe having a single raid where if you have progressed through progressed through 2 sides of the dungeon, like with heroics, you have defeated both of these 2 bosses. Later on, you can simply progress through one side to get to the end boss and maybe have a little more time to work on him without having to slug through as many bosses week after week.
We're actually talking about that, and it came up because something we haven't really talked about with looking for raid is, so for Dragon Soul's 8 bosses, but the way looking for raid works is you don't choose all of Dragon Soul, because doing 8 bosses in one night, and looking for raid, that's a very long time commitment. So
big commitment.
It's a huge commitment. So it actually breaks it up. It does actually break it up into two halves. There's the first 4 bosses, and if you beat the last boss of those 4, you get the big battle reward. And same thing, after you've beaten those, you can choose the second half, and then it breaks up. And again, trying to keep the content to smaller chunks. So along with that, potentially, if we're going to end up building in those doors, those back doors, Karazhan had the back door that was halfway up, and that's something I think we're starting to think more about the logistics of getting raids through, and that's something that might happen in the future.
That's it. I got to keep moving. I can't.
Well, infection. I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Preston Wolf, my fellow tank. He couldn't be here because he had to get eye surgery. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, you guys. We've got about 5 minutes, so just enough time for a couple more questions.
At last year's BlizzCon and all throughout Cataclysm, you hinted and showed a bunch of artwork for Abyssal Maw raid, but never released it. Do you have any plans, and what happened to that?
We don't have any plans to release Abyssal Maw raid at this point. What Abyssal Maw was it was a raid we were talking about doing for Cataclysm that was going to fit into Vashir, and it ended up, it turned out that the storyline that we were telling within that raid and the boss that we were going to use didn't fit with where we were going for the patch cycle. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with it or we were trying to not do it on purpose. It just ended up not fitting. We ended up having better ideas for some other stuff we wanted to do, so we actually lost all that. The concept art is about as far as we had gotten on it, was concept, which we showed at BlizzCon last year. All that was just basically throwaway work at that point. But from a story perspective, we've kind of moved on from Cataclysm, so I don't think we're going to go back to it. But that's what happened. We just ended up not using it because we had something better.
Thank you.
All right, for your new dungeon challenges, you're going to be reducing people's item level to a certain level. I wanted to know how you were going to handle the secondary stats like hit and expertise, since those also get lowered, and people just take those to the caps and then they stop. So the lower geared people are still going to be at their caps, whereas the higher geared people, they're just going to get that flat chopped off the top, and will actually suffer the DPS loss from that.
That's a good point, and that's something we'll certainly have to work out. There's a lot of other little details like that, like how do we handle trinkets.
We have top men working on a solution for that.
Very much so. We have faith in these top men.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
In other words, don't worry. Okay, real quick, one more, guys.
Hi, what's going on? I was just wondering how in Oldar and Heroic Lich King, like when you did Zero Light and you did Heroic Lich King, you would get Invincible and you would get the no-head mount. It was 100% on hard mode. But in Firelands, you guys made normal mode people get the Firehawk mount, and it made people who got Firelord. It was just kind of like a bummer that you can see these noobs or whatever riding around on mounts that you get to kind of work for to get it, Like, do you plan on continuing doing that, or do you want to just give these awesome mounts to people who don't deserve it?
I think goodness. Now, on Heroic, you did get them every single time you killed him, and on Normal, I don't think that was the case. So, you were rewarded more, but as far as actual,
and it's a different color.
Oh, it's a different color. Yeah. So,
that's part of the reason with Raid Finder that we're going to be separating out so that the mounts like that are only going to come from Normal and Heroic and aren't going to come from Raid Finder, because Raid Finder is kind of what we're looking at as an intro to raiding for most people. That's why, like we were talking about earlier, all those prestige items are going to stay in Normal and Heroic modes.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. That's it for Q&A.
Thanks,
guys.
Water there.
Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Raids panel. Up next, Diablo 3 Gameplay and Auction House panel, beginning at 4:45.
BlizzCon 2011 continues here live on DirecTV and on the internet. We've got the Diablo 3 Auction House panel and gameplay panel coming up in about 15 minutes as the fans get in their costumes, getting ready for the costume contest later tonight with Jay Moore. But right now we are coming back to our live set here for BlizzCon for 15 minutes of Q&A with a man who is very important to the world of Blizzard. Of course, the co-founder and president and CEO of Blizzard, Mike Morhaime. Mike, it's great to have you back
Jeff
here live
Kat,
on DirecTV.
Nice to have you guys back here at BlizzCon.
Yes, it's a yearly tradition. We saw you this morning at the opening ceremony. Now, what does it feel like to be in front of 26,000 people? And we were talking before. Just the roar of the crowd. Does it energize you?
Well, leading up to when I walk out, we showed that kind of retro video, 1991, leading up to last year and everything, and the crowd was there's so much energy building up to that, and for me, it's the friendliest crowd in the world, but the energy in that room is incredible. So it's a lot of fun, but
don't get nervous anymore.
I get nervous still. Absolutely. I woke up very early this morning, couldn't fall asleep.
Oh my God! Well, you had some good news though, so that helps.
Yeah.
You had a lot of big announcements for the fans. Well, you've got Twitter up and running, so if folks have questions for you, I know you're on Twitter now too at Mike Morhaime, and Kat and I are both on there with our names.
Saw Mist of Pandaria was trending earlier. Really happy about that.
That was awesome. I saw you tweeting that. So if you have a question for Mike, you can send it to us right now on Twitter, and we'll make sure to call it up, Kat, because we know fans have some questions.
They do. Actually, before we get started to Twitter questions, I just wanted to ask you, looking back at the last year, what are some things that stand out most to you? I know we had the 20th anniversary, which was a big thing.
Yeah.
What are some memorable moments for you over the last year?
Well, let's see. Getting StarCraft 2 out was just a huge event. I'm a huge fan of the series. and I absolutely love playing and watching the tournaments.
You're actually a big StarCraft player.
I'm a big StarCraft fan. I love playing StarCraft. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm not the best StarCraft player, but even that, I think with StarCraft 2, it's the first time I've been able to go online and play, and I'm winning 50% of my matches. That has never happened before. So kudos to the matchmaking with StarCraft 2. So I'm getting some good games in there. I love watching Day 9 and the Day 9 dailies. He gives us some good tips. I'm sorry I missed the multiplayer panel. I had to do interviews, but I think maybe I'll try to get some of the guys to take me out to lunch and give me some pointers.
I'm sure they'd be more than happy to give you some pointers.
Well, fans
let me just answer your question.
Sure.
A lot of the live tournaments, Barcraft events, we had a couple of great Barcraft events in Irvine last weekend.
We did.
And so that's just been a great time, and I love to see the momentum that esports is getting.
There's over
really
300
excited about the
people.
Diablo 3, the beta, and some of the feedback we're getting. A lot of people have come up to me. Big fans of the series are happy to finally see Diablo around the corner, but a lot of new players who've never played Diablo are really enjoying the beta.
They are. I have this prediction that I think that Diablo 3 is going to bring a lot of women into the franchise that have never played before.
That would be great.
I expect it. I'm predicting it right now.
Well, it's going to be a big year for Blizzard fans next year. Because they're getting a sneak preview and stuff here, but next year, there's potential. You've already said that multiple Blizzard projects coming out hopefully in 2012, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a big year. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about was you announced the new expansion, obviously, and recently you've been quoted as saying that you want to speed up how quickly the expansion packs come out for Warcraft. You guys thought that you put too much space between them.
Right.
So what does that mean, basically? I mean, does that mean we're going to see this next expansion sooner than we think? Do you have multiple expansions at work? I mean, how are we going to see that manifest itself?
We would like to get expansions faster.
Right.
I think we've been taking too long in the past. I'd love to see that get down. I think we sort of feel like getting closer to, a year and a half mark feels more right. I think we need to continue offering free content to players and just really get more efficient about the way we're making content.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Right now, you guys
I can't
do
make
these
any promises.
You guys do these big expansions, but I think some people say, "Well, are they going to be smaller expansions that will come more frequently, or how will it change?"
How do you measure big and small?
Right,
I think we're not trying to decrease the amount of fun and new things to do in the expansions. I think we can maybe be smarter about the way that we're creating that content, so that it ends up providing a better experience for players.
All right, so it sounds like 20. You're not committing anything, I'm sure, but 2012 for the new expansion seems like a safe bet, then, right?
I think that's a safe bet.
I have a question from Twitter, and it's incredibly simple, but as soon as I read it, I marked it. Me finding what her name is so I can read it, or his name, whoever, we'll find out. But Z. Krogman asks, what's it like to be the president of Blizzard?
What's it like? It's really tough to answer that question. I mean, when I come to BlizzCon, it's just such a great feeling to be here, and I've gotten to interact with some of the players. We have a charity dinner benefiting Chalk, which is the local children's hospital in Orange County, and just getting to talk to people from all over the world, all over the United States, and hear their passion for World of Warcraft and our other games, and it just really makes you feel good about what we've been doing and feel appreciated. And there's really nothing better for the development team to come here and see the reaction from players on what we're doing. So what's it like to be president of Blizzard? I'm very proud of everything we've accomplished over the past 20 years. I'm proud of the teams we build and the people I get to work with. So,
life's good.
Life is good at BlizzCon 2011.
All right, well, let's get to some of these questions, because I got to say there are hundreds of questions coming in for you, Mike. The first one is a kind of a big, broad business question, but it's interesting. This comes from Luis, and he says, Mike, how do you see the MMO market in the future with so many companies adopting microtransaction models? There are a lot of free-to-play games out there. There have been rumors for a while, would Blizzard ever, make World of Warcraft more free-to-play? How do you see the market kind of evolving for MMOs?
I think it's a really difficult market to compete in.
Yep.
And so I can understand, that you want to compete and make the barrier to entry for new players as low as possible.
Yep.
And so I think for a lot of companies, free-to-play is the way to go to do that. I think for us, we've been trying to compete on the high end of the market, and so I don't really see free-to-play necessarily in our future, although I do think we've started playing around with this a little bit with the World of Warcraft Starter Edition, but I do think that we need to continue making the game more accessible to new players who've never tried the game and lower that barrier so that it's just easy to try, easy to get into. I think still the best way to expose World of Warcraft to new players is through a friend.
Yep.
There's no tutorial that we're going to do is going to be as good as having
Guiding
somebody that you can
world.
go to and ask questions and, kind of hold your hand in the beginning. So I think we want to look at ways where we can encourage and assist our players in doing just that.
Wow. All right, good answer. Let's move right on, Kat, right? We got more coming in. Do you have
Sure,
one?
I absolutely here.
No
Okay.
more Twitter questions for me, huh?
No, we have a lot more Twitter questions for you, actually. Well, we were going to talk about this, but Lady Kazez actually just asked it for Mike Morheim. Will the Tauren Chieftain Allegiance come back this year? The artist formerly known as Level 80 Tauren
They may get an upgrade to 85 tonight. We don't want to spoil anything, but I hear there's going to be...
We may just skip right past 85. We'll see.
But new music tonight, right?
We are playing this year.
Okay, yeah.
We're so excited about it. I mean, it's just what a treat. We get to open for the Foo Fighters.
Is Dave Grohl going to maybe play drums with you guys? Go 2 sets now?
Unlikely. Unlikely.
But some new music at least,
We
right?
do. We have some new music, and we've been working hard practicing. So we're really excited
Samwise
about it.
and you and the gang are ready. All right, so we'll see you guys. That's tomorrow night, opening act for the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Can you tease any title names for us, song names?
Oh, no, I think we'll leave them guessing for now.
We'll have to wait and see. All right, well, more questions coming in for you here. This one is from Lord Gabriel. Now we get to the questions with people asking about future things.
I'm going to take this one, actually.
All right, fine. All right.
Okay, I promised Mike I was going to ask this. I made an analogy before when I was talking about the new game, and I used the phrase Warcraft 4, so I'm going to ask you officially for the crowd. Are you in development of Warcraft 4?
I can tell you all of our real-time strategy resources are completely focused on StarCraft 2.
Thank you.
And Blizzard Dota.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, and also you've got, as you said, I mean, you guys are working on the unannounced MMO that you're not talking about here, and then obviously, World of Warcraft, and then Diablo. One thing that some people are asking on Twitter, and I was wondering about too, is, Diablo's getting close to release. You said early 2012 for it. And there's been a lot of talk online about the idea of you guys bringing in console programmers to experiment with the idea of Diablo for consoles. You haven't announced anything, but it sounds like you're getting pretty serious about that, right?
I think we still think that the gameplay and the interface of Diablo could make for a really great console game.
Yep.
I mean, our focus right now with Diablo is to get through beta and get the game out.
Yeah, so we wouldn't see a console version coming out alongside the PC release,
No.
right? So it has to be something in the future.
We're focusing on the PC online version.
Right.
PC and Mac.
All right, well, we will stay tuned, but it's encouraging that you guys are looking into it.
I just want to throw one in real quick. I was talking to DJ Wheat, a shoutcaster for StarCraft 2, and he had just gotten out of the ESL finals, and he was making an analogy that said that right now in North America, StarCraft 2 is very similar to what StarCraft was like in 1999 in Korea. That level of excitement is what we're feeling here in North America, which is pretty exciting. Warcraft, 300 people. What is Blizzard going to do to foster that community in North America and keep this momentum rolling?
Well, what we've started doing is really reaching out to all of the people organizing live events, viewing the matches, and helping them get the word out and publicize those things. So you can go to StarCraft2.com and you can see a list of events. I think that's kind of how it starts. And it's interesting because I think that also will help expose StarCraft 2 to more people, because they'll be in the bars or restaurants and maybe they went to watch football on a Sunday and what's going on over there? You guys are watching a video game?
Yeah.
It's kind of how it starts. You start to see more and more of it. I think that's how it started in Korea too.
And there are very basic things that you can teach the audience to help them grasp onto it, like the rules of baseball or the rules of football.
Yeah.
You have a Twitter question for us right there?
Well, and there's literally hundreds of questions waiting for Mike. Here's one that's a big question from John Paul. He says, for Mike, what's the hardest decision you've ever had to make as the CEO of Blizzard?
That I ever had to make?
As CEO of Blizzard.
That you can share.
I guess it's when it comes to when we've actually decided to cancel a game.
Like Warcraft Adventures, things like that?
Warcraft Adventures was a really tough decision. That actually came very shortly after I became president of Blizzard.
Okay.
It was one of the first big decisions I had to make.
Wow.
And we looked at the game, and it was actually really the story I think you guys are familiar with, because ultimately it formed the foundation for Warcraft 3, the storyline. Let's see. I think Monkey Island, one of the Monkey Islands, had just come out. Grim Fandango was in the works. Lucas, had been doing these 2D graphical adventures for a really long time. We really looked up to them, and I think it was the last Monkey Island. It came out. It was awesome, and it just really did not have. It's almost like they missed the window.
Yeah.
2D graphical adventures were kind of on the way down, and here we are working on a really awesome Warcraft adventure game, but it wasn't even as good as Monkey Island, and we knew that we had to do a lot of work to hit that bar. And the opportunity cost of doing that versus focusing on other games that we had in development, we just viewed as too high. StarCraft Ghost was another tough one for us. And back then this was right after we released World of Warcraft, and things were just blowing up with World of Warcraft. We had StarCraft 2 in development, and we got into this situation where StarCraft Ghost was not getting the attention or resources that it needed to be successful. We'd find a great 3D artist. He'd come in. The Ghost team wanted him. StarCraft 2 wanted him. World of Warcraft wanted him. Who gets him?
In demand.
Not StarCraft Ghost.
Yeah.
Right.
And we ultimately just had to make the decision. We could not provide that game an environment where it could get the attention that it needed to become a Blizzard quality game. And it was tough at the time, but that team ended up helping all of the Blizzard projects become so much better.
Tough decisions, but the ones that had to be made. All right, Mike, well, we're going to wrap up with you because we've got to get to the Diablo 3 panel. Jay Wilson, the team, is going to be on stage in just a minute here.
Awesome.
Talking about the auction house. So we're going to head on over there for the Diablo 3 auction house and gameplay panel with Jay Wilson, the team. We'll see you right back after that. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
To the Diablo 3 gameplay and auction house panel. Your panelists are Jay Wilson, Jason Bender, Wyatt Cheng, Andrew Chambers, and Chris Haga.
I love you too, faceless member. I actually can see your face. Oh, it's Pinto. Hi, Pinto. What's up, BlizzCon? How you doing? You guys ready to talk about some Diablo? Okay. So I have to tell you, the Endless Forces of Hell, they got some plans for you guys. But I have to say, looking around the room, I think you can take them. I think so. So what we're going to talk to you today is the endless amounts of items, class tuning, abilities, and a whole bunch of stuff about how you can take on those forces of hell. So our panelists here today are myself, Jay, I work on Diablo, Jason Bender, Senior Game Designer, Andrew Chambers, Senior Game Designer, Wyatt Ching, Senior Technical Game Designer, and Chris Haga, Technical Artist. So I'm going to go ahead and let Bender get started.
Thank you, Jay. Hey, everybody. So I'm going to talk about achievements today a little bit. And you can get achievements in a number of ways. One of those ways is coming to BlizzCon. So congratulations, you got your virtual achievement. So, not all achievements involve you going to LAX and all that jazz. Some of them are a little easier to get. Normally you might be playing through and you kill the Skeleton King. You can get an achievement for that. It allows you to track your progress as you're going through the game, feel good about what you've done, review it. Some of it's a little more crazy. Extreme behavior. We consider it extreme to get a level 60 hardcore character because it's not easy. So, if you do things that are a little tougher in the game, you're going to get achievements for that. And then, of course, absurd shenanigans, because we all love shenanigans. Our German players know about this. They play D2 without putting any armor on. That's pretty absurd. In this case, it might be for beating every boss by punching it in the face without holding a weapon. So that would be something that might get you an achievement. But, what's the point beyond that? They're fun to collect. They let you track your accomplishments. But when you get achievements, they also unlock components for your banner. So your banner is sort of a visual representation of what you've done in the game, of all your accomplishments. The more you achieve, the more components for your banner you unlock. For example, in PvP, you might open some crests. Just playing through the game normally and getting achievements by quantity will extend this pennant, so it gets more stuff on it as you play. Other achievements can change the cloth, the sigil, the accents. And then, of course, if you play a lot of hardcore, the base of your banner will get bigger. And after a while, it can all add up to something pretty cool. So now, these banners are not just pretty, although they are pretty. They also allow you, in co-op, to teleport directly to your friends. So if they're out running around, you don't know where they are, you went back to town to craft something or buy from a vendor, you can just click on their banner and then teleport directly to them. So that's pretty useful. Plus, that's a good way of ensuring that people see your cool banner. That's not it, though. There's some other elements we're adding to make gameplay a little more convenient for you. For example, the Stone of Recall. So the Stone of Recall is an endless use item. You can use it as many times as you want to get yourself back to town from the wilderness. So here we are, casting it. It takes about 10 seconds. Can be interrupted by monsters. Let's hope that guy up there on the left doesn't interrupt us. So you get back to town, and it leaves this blue portal thing behind. And that allows you to go back to where you came from. Only you can use it. Your friends can't use it, but they can get to you with your banner, so that's no big deal. We're not sure what to call this thing, maybe like Village Door or something. If you can think of something, let us know. Also, we have the Cauldron of Jordan. So the Cauldron of Jordan allows you to sell stuff right out of your inventory. So if you want to clear up your inventory, you want some gold, you can sell as many things as you want right out of your bag. Similarly, the Cube of the Nephilim allows you to pick items in your bag and convert them to crafting components. So you can, you got some stuff in your bag, you like it, maybe you replaced your gear, you don't want to go back to town just yet, you can use the Cube of the Nephilim to convert them into crafting materials and craft all kinds of cool stuff.
Thanks, Jason. Holy moly, there's a lot of you guys out there. How you doing? Alright, I'm going to talk about crafting for a bit, but crafting is all about making items, or making your existing items, even more awesome. So I wanted to take a step back and look at the way that items were handled in Diablo 2, and what their item lifecycle was. You kind of got items from two different sources in Diablo 2. You could buy it from a vendor, or you could do what I've done here, kill Andariel and get awesome Trident. Once I've picked up that item, I'm probably going to, say, wear it for a while, but then it's going to get upgraded, and I can trade it to my friend for some gold, maybe, if I'm lucky, or I can sell it to Chassis here for some gold. What do I do with that gold? Well, you could gamble it with Geed. Geed allowed you to buy these unidentified items for like crazy amounts of gold or crazy little amounts of gold, and then you identified them and found out what it was. The system is actually really cool because it gave you access to some super powerful items, but a lot of people had a really negative experience when they first tried it out, so they never really went back and kept on doing it again and again and again. So you just end up hoarding all of your gold, and that's not really a life cycle. That's just, you know, a pub with no beer. And that makes Andrew really, really sad. So what are some of the things that we're doing in Diablo 3 to make this item life cycle better? First off, I want to talk about the Mystic. The Mystic is where you go if you want to enhance your items. She can take any item that you have, like your chest piece or your bracers, and she can add an enhancement to it. The enhancements are a wide array of things, like Gold Find or Magic Find, but also increase core stats. There's also a whole bunch of things that you can do for, like, that's class related. So, for example, here it increases hatred regeneration by 0.83 per second on a one-handed weapon. The interesting thing about enhancements in Diablo 3 as opposed to WoW is they're actually random. So that 0.83 per second, that actually has a chance, like the bottom line for that is 0.66 per second. So you can see up here I've enhanced my Keen Axe of Storms with Hatred Regen, and I've gotten the bottom. It's like 0.66 per second. I can reapply that enhancement and have a chance of actually making it better and making it get to the top end of that range. The awesome thing about that is, as you're leveling up, you know, you apply the enhancement, and that's good enough at it's maybe like middle range. But at the end game, by applying these enhancements, you can get like really super powerful enhancements on your items that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get by investing time and resources into that. And of course, she really facilitates aberrant builds. What is that? That is a demon hunter running around with a one-handed axe and a shield. Who the hell thought of that? We did. Because it's awesome, you know? Like, you don't always have to want to run around and play with ranged weapons. Maybe you just want to, like, spam Fan of Knives and Chakram and Vault everywhere and that sort of stuff. And the Mystic can allow you to do that. Ordinarily, you wouldn't be able to get Hatred Regen on a one-handed axe. But, hey, she lets you do it because she's kind of cool. And she levels up. She has 10 levels. Awesome artwork. We have amazing artists, by the way. Have you noticed? Yeah. She levels up. She has 10 levels. Every time she levels up, she gets more powerful enhancements. And she uses pages of training to level up, which you can get from killing monsters randomly in the world. The next guy I want to talk about is the Jeweler. This guy's Covetous Shen. He's a little bit shady, but if you have anything gem-related, he's the guy to go to. So what can he do? He can combine your gems. In the game, you have like 14 different ranks of gems. Gems can be put in sockets of your items, and they imbue extra properties. So, like, you know, you want more experience, you can put a ruby in your helm socket, and that gives you plus X% experience for every kill that you make. The more powerful ones, of course, like, are only found and able to be combined. So you're going to have to level him up to get access to those. He can also add sockets to items. This is great. Like, say I'm playing a bard and I'm like really loving precision and frenzy and kicking butt that way. And I get this item and it's got tons of precision, tons of like fury regeneration on it, but I need precision. So I add a socket to it, and then I can put the gem in there, which has the plus precision attribute. He also removes gems from items. It's actually pretty cool. Let me give you an example here. Say you're like leveling up, you hit level 60, you've been having that plus experience gem in your helm the entire time, but you're level 60 now. You don't need experience. So you go to this guy, you have him take the gem out, you put the plus 20% life in there, because in Inferno you're going to need it, and then you can send that plus experience gem to your ult, and then help level him up faster. Speaking of leveling up, the Jeweler also levels up. as he levels up, he gets the ability to combine more powerful gems, higher ranks. He also uses pages of training to level up. So when you're like improving your like artisans, you're gonna have to kind of pick and choose which ones you want to focus on. Fortunately, they're account based, so you know you level up your barb to level 60, and you focus on the blacksmith the entire time. On the demon hunter, you level in, you jump in, and right there and then the blacksmith is already like level 10, and your mystic, you know, you can level her up separately. Talking about the blacksmith, we've spoken a lot about him already. He can forge items and craft, you know, things for you. What we haven't spoken about is he can actually craft legendary and unique set items for you. So these are things that you find in, say, normal difficulty. So here he's like making the Sanity's Edge. It's a legendary two-handed mighty weapon. This has actually come from a plan that you found when you were killing a monster. You took that plan to your blacksmith, you taught it to him, and now you can make that again and again and again. He can also make the unique set items. Now, this is a normal difficulty unique set. You're going to, you know, find this in the world when you're playing normal. The tricky thing about Diablo is that these items can drop from anything. It's not like you can pick one boss and just go and farm that for your set. So we figured, hey, let's, you know, make it a little bit easier for you guys. And once you get this plan, you can then craft every item in this set to get the set bonus. So here I've crafted Born's Pauldrons, the shoulder pieces, and his Seething Rage, the one-handed sword. I've crafted those so I can wear them and get the set bonus. Makes it way easier. I mean, in Inferno, you're still going to be like farming unique sets and that sort of stuff, but this is just a really great way of ensuring that as you're progressing through the game, you can still get the cool factor out of these things. So how does the Diablo 3 item life cycle look with all those added features? Well, when an item's born, it can come from a vendor or from a loot drop. It can also come from crafting or, of course, from the auction house. So what do I do with it? I can wear it. Probably definitely going to wear it if I buy it off the auction house. When I'm done with it, I can sell it. That gives me gold for repairs or for crafting or forging more gear. I can salvage it, and I can actually sell those salvage components on the auction house. I can use them to enhance my existing items. I can put it on the auction house directly, make gold, make money. Who doesn't like that? Or I can trade it. I can help twink out my characters, or I can, you know, give it to my friend and be nice. It's not my style, but, you know, I twink. So what's an example of that? So say I'm playing through the game, and I get a loot drop. I don't really need it, it's not an upgrade, so I decide to salvage it. Salvage it into some components that I put for sale up on the auction house. Someone buys that, win, rock and roll, I made some gold. I keep on playing for a while, and then next week I go and like look on the auction house and see a wicked one-handed axe that's just like perfect for me. I decide to buy that from the auction house. I didn't know that that was actually crafted from the same salvage components that I sold on the auction house a week earlier. That's a life cycle, and that makes Andrew happy. And of course we have some awesome item artwork that we just wanted to show off. It didn't fit in anywhere else, but these are all the awesome items that you're going to be doing and playing with. Thanks. So who likes PvP?
I like PvP.
You like PvP? I wasn't loud enough. Who likes PvP? BlizzCon high five for PvP. I just high-fived BlizzCon. It's kind of awesome. Yeah.
Well,
okay,
sir.
So I guess I better talk about PvP now. As a lot of you might know, last year we had Arena on the floor. This year, playable, we have Team Deathmatch. We got a lot of awesome feedback from you guys, from the community, from last year's showing of the Arena, and one of the dominant forms of feedback that we got was that sitting around and waiting while my friends kill each other really isn't fun. So we're introducing Team Deathmatch. Team Deathmatch really solves that problem. You die, you're back in 3 seconds. You're back in the fight, you're fighting, you're able to like play with your character more, you're able to explore more. There's not the intimidation factor in Team Deathmatch either of like, wow, am I going to let my like arena team down by coming in with this crazy magic, you know, wizard build that only spawns like mirror images and that's all I do? No, it's totally cool. So Team Deathmatch, the game is 10 minutes games. There's 2 teams, red and blue. At the end of the game, the team with the most kills wins. There's definitely no skill swapping during games. There's also no item swapping during games. We want there to be like still some tactical advantage to understanding, hey, that barb over there who's running up and like stunning like the heck out of me the entire time. I need to know that the entire 10 minutes of the game so I can actually effectively deal with that and respond. It's definitely going to be 4v4. Last year it was 3v3. Stepped it up. 4v4 is way more fun for responsiveness and the interactivity. You're definitely going to be using your PvE character. There was some confusion about this, but you're definitely going to be like leveling up to 60, taking your character, your wizard or your witch doctor that you've been focusing on and getting to Inferno in, bringing them into PvP, and then experiencing them in PvP and seeing how they play out. And hey, go play it. We have it on the showroom floor. You're our community. We make these games for you. We love your feedback. It is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the auction house. I hope you guys like UI because there's a wall of it coming at you. All right, so why an auction house? Well, one of the major things and reasons that we decided to do an auction house is because trading is a big focus of the Diablo games. So some of you might know that you get loot in Diablo games, and it's kind of a big deal. That loot is randomized. The Diablo system is pretty unique in that everything that drops is got some kind of random element if it's something that you wear on your body. And any monster could drop any item in the world. You don't have to go to a particular monster and do that. But because of that, there's actually really, really low odds that you get the exact thing you want. Even if you get the exact thing you want, the chances that it actually has the best stats that you could possibly get on that item is pretty much, it's almost impossible. And that's really by design. Because Diablo's always been a social game in the sense that you play with and trade with other players. So trading is really the best way to get the best items in the game, and that's always been the case for all the Diablo games. We've focused really heavily on the trading aspect. So given that, you'd think that the previous games would have awesome systems for trading, and if you think that, you'd be wrong. So in Diablo 2, there were a bunch of ways you could trade. There was an in-game interface where you could kind of put items up and you'd stick your item up and somebody else would, and you'd say, well, what do you got? And hopefully it had something good that you wanted. You could throw items on the ground and pray. I wouldn't recommend that. You could go up and post in the chat channels or forums, hoping that someone is listening who has the thing you want or wants to buy the thing you have. It's pretty inefficient, and it makes the chat channels not really very chatty. And then you could also go to like third-party websites and buy things with real money. And that works fine, except that maybe the transaction wouldn't work. Maybe you get ripped off. Maybe someone would steal your account. So none of those were really great experiences, and we felt that we could do a lot better. So we focused on an auction house because it's really a very well-known, convenient, secure, easy way for people to trade. There's things like the WoW auction house. There's eBay. People understand an auction house. They understand how it works and how to interact with it. So we made the decision to allow players to trade in Diablo 3 the same way that they traded in Diablo 2, with gold or real money. So we're going to let you pretty much trade almost anything in the auction house. A wearable item, gold, stackable components like crafting items and things like that. So, and this is one of the most important points. We want you to be able to participate for free if you go into the real money auction house. A lot of people have said to us, I don't necessarily have a problem with, the real money or not. I just don't want to open up my wallet. I don't want to give you a credit card. And you know what? That's fine. You don't have to, and I'm going to explain how. This is Timmy the Demon Hunter. Why is he Timmy? Because it amuses me to call a Demon Hunter Timmy. So Timmy needs a new bow. That'd be nice. That bow would be pretty awesome. Venom Husk. Got a lot of blue little statty things on there. We like those. So he goes off in the world seeking his fortune. Oh, does he find it? Nope. Instead, he finds this thing. Wow. 566 DPS, two-hander. Not for him. If he had a barbarian or a barbarian friend, that'd be a pretty good item, but, well, we're going to pretend that Timmy doesn't have any friends because he named his Demon Hunter Timmy. I mean, come on. But he's still happy. He got this really awesome thing, but he wants his Venom Husk. So he's going to go up on the auction house, and he's going to post this up. And he's going to post it up on the Real Money Auction House. Now, the important thing is here, he can do this for free, because every week we're going to allow people to have a small number of free listings. And one of the reasons for that is we want you to be able to generate some income and get a balance without actually having to spend any money. So he puts his Overfiend up there. It sells. Bong. $7.50 in his account. Now, he could have output that to a PayPal account and made $7.50 playing Diablo, which is pretty awesome. Or he can do what he did, which is put it directly into his e-balance, and now he can use that to go back on the auction house and buy things and post more auctions. So Timmy is happy. He goes up, he finds his Venom Husk, $5. Bam. Purchased. Sent to his character, and equipped. Check him out. So, on top of being able to participate in that way, we also are going to add a lot of features. Some of you are in the beta and you've managed to play with the Gold Auction House, and you've probably noticed that it's not really as fully featured as we'd like. So we are adding a bunch of new features. The first one is a smart search feature. And basically what this does is it takes any character that you want, it'll look at the character and say, okay, you seem to be a barbarian who likes a lot of crit. So we're going to point you at items that do that. And then you can kind of funnel the results and say, these are all the items I want, but I really want precision, I really want lifesteal, so just show me the ones that have those affixes on them. So another thing we've done is we're going to add an advanced search, which really is kind of a bigger version of the smart search. It lets you basically just set all kinds of parameters, pretty much anything that you can literally specify the exact item stats that you want to see. And features like this are really important because the Diablo item system is not filled with a lot of named items that are easy to search for. You're really going to be searching more for stats. So next, we are going to let you sell stackable items. It's currently not supported, but it will. That's gold, gems, crafting dies, tomes, books, all those types of things. Almost everything that is worth selling, pretty much everything that's worth selling, we're going to allow you to sell in the auction house. All right.
Let's talk about game tuning for a little while. We're getting ready to finalize a lot of the game components, particularly the difficulty in the classes and the monsters. We've been making a lot of improvements to the monsters. I'm going to be talking a lot about changes that we've made since the beta, as well as changes that we've made since last year's BlizzCon. For those of you who don't know, a lot of the content for killing monsters in Diablo is based around rares and champions, and they have magical properties like Electrified or Plagued, Teleporter, Desecrator. We have a couple of new affixes that we've been putting into the game over the last few weeks. One of those new ones is actually on display in the video over here. It's called Mortar. Mortar is, the monster has the ability to lob these grenades. We felt like a lot of the affixes that are currently in there penalize melee much more than ranged, things like Electrified and Plagued. So Mortar actually shoots grenades a minimum distance. So if you're, let me go back on that. If you're a melee character, the grenades will actually fly right over your head. Moving on to some passive skills, we're going to talk about the classes. A lot of the focus has been on making passives good. We've had feedback that some of the passives are interesting, but some of them aren't so interesting. Some of the classes don't all seem to have equally interesting number of passives. Here's one of the new passives that we've got for the Barbarian. One of the things about passives is they actually serve a number of purposes. Some people want passives that support specific builds. Some people want passives that introduce cool new visual elements. In this case, we felt that it was important for a barbarian to be able to have a defensive build option, and we also felt that it might be instructional for players who aren't sure if a barbarian could be built in a tanky sort of way, so we have this new passive Nerves of Steel to help support that playstyle. Some of our other passives, this one's on the Witch Doctor, Fetish Sycophants. It summons one of the little fetish helpers to fight along your side, and this happens anytime you cast a physical skill. It's things like Poison Dart or Plague of Toads, 3% chance in every cast, so that's a really popular passive internally as well. Another passive I have here is Combination Strike. So if you guys remember the Spirit Generators, this one's a monk skill. In the past, we've called them combo skills. Combo skills, spirit generators, sort of interchangeable. In this case, if you use multiple different spirit generators together, you get a DPS increase. And the more spirit generators you combine together, the larger the increase. I'm going to go through some of the classes now and talk about them. Oh, sorry, one more thing. Synergy. So this is an interesting thing that's come up over the last few months as we've been tuning passives, is the situation where you have too much synergy can actually be bad. So the example that we have on the board, up on the PowerPoint, is counterattack. Whenever you dodge, you automatically damage your attacker. Sixth Sense, which gives you increased chance to dodge. And evasive, which gives you an increased chance to dodge every time you critical strike. Each one of these passives is pretty cool on its own. But when you put them all together, we felt like it was actually taking away build diversity rather than increasing it. Because as soon as you took one passive, you had a synergistic advantage for taking a second one, and then the third one. And if we give you 3 passives to choose from out of 15, we're actually pigeonholing players rather than allowing them to explore. So we've been seeking out these sorts of overly synergistic passives and removing them. Talk about the Barbarian. So for those of you who've played the Barbarian in the beta, Barbarian we feel like is in a pretty good place. He's fun, he's visceral, he's doing a lot of things that we want to do. A couple specific areas that we wanted to target. One was Fury Generation. He has a couple of Fury Generator skills, and we felt like his small, spammable generators weren't paying off as well as his big generators. So for example, players were using Leap Attack, Ground Stomp, Warcry, and skipping some of the Fury Generators like Cleave and Frenzy and Bash. So we've kind of adjusted those numbers a little bit to try and provide a better balance there. Another area that we've been looking at is survivability. You didn't see it so much during the level 1 to 12 game, but as you started to get into higher difficulties, Nightmare, Hell, Inferno, we really found that Barbarians were having trouble staying in melee. The Barbarians need to be in melee range to do damage, and without the survivability, they just weren't able to do that. So we've been looking at survivability, like I said, the passive earlier on. We've been also looking at the Barbarians' base stats, and just looking to kind of make them a little tougher overall. The Wizard, also in a good place. For those of you, again, who've been following along, we have a set of skills that were called academic skills. We've renamed those to signature skills. It's the same idea. Basically, as you level up, the skills become cheaper. Eventually, they become free. We really like how that's playing out. Overall, the Wizard's feeling pretty good. One of the areas that is a concern for us is whether or not it is worthwhile to use a signature spell when you're out of arcane power, and whether or not it's worth using a non-signature spell to spend your arcane power. So we've been tweaking those numbers to make sure players feel like they actually have different reasons to use different spells. And finally, one of the major changes that we've been making is all of the Wizard and Witch Doctor spells have been converted over to do % weapon damage. A major reason for this is we really felt that the casters needed to value their weapon more. People were finding weapons and looking at it and saying, I don't really care about the stats on this sword because my skills don't use it. So it's all based on weapon damage. One of the questions we get all the time is, well, then should my Wizard just use a giant two-handed mace? Because I don't want to hold a two-handed mace. Well, in addition to being based on weapon damage, we also use the weapon speed to determine your casting speed. So if you use like a wand or a fast dagger, then you'll actually cast faster as well. Talk a little bit about the Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor lover over here. One of the questions we get also is about mana. People have noticed that in the beta, mana seems to be unlimited. This, in the beta, is absolutely true. The mana gameplay that we want, mana is the only resource that's returning from Diablo 2. So what we're doing with it is we're providing multiple mechanisms for the Witch Doctor to recover mana. In this case, one of those would be passives. There's a number of passives that have to do with mana regeneration. There's also runes, and some of the runes will help out with mana regeneration or making some of the skills cheaper to cast. And then there is items. You get mana regeneration and items. The goal here is that players will choose a mix of different avenues to supplement their mana regeneration. So one Witch Doctor might decide to use a number of skill runes as their source of mana regeneration. Others might rely on gear. Another might take passives. Some Witch Doctors might actually do all three and go way overboard. Now the question is, will that Witch Doctor who just puts everything in the mana recovery have unlimited mana? And the answer is actually yes, because we want lots of customizable builds. The Witch Doctor who decides they don't want to have to mess around with mana and overloads on it will probably sacrifice some offensive ability or utility to do so, but will at least get to play in a way that's fun for them. Unfortunately, a lot of this play isn't really evident in the beta. The passives just start to kick in at level 10, a lot of the gear doesn't have a lot of mana regeneration on it yet, and the skill runes aren't in yet, so you won't see any of that. So from level 1 to 10, before any of this gameplay really kicks in, we basically make mana unlimited and free, because the player hasn't been given the tools to overcome a shortage of mana yet. We're going to talk about the passives. We talked about Fetish Sycophants earlier. Another new passive on the Witch Doctor is called Circle of Life. Circle of Life makes it so that whenever an enemy near you dies, it automatically summons a zombie dog. And what's really cool about that is you don't even have to have the zombie dog skill trained. If you have the passive Circle of Life and an enemy dies, and there's a chance that the zombie dog comes out. If you take the zombie dog skill, then you get to add runes, and the passive will benefit from that as well. This particular Witch Doctor in the video took both Circle of Life and Fetish Sycophants. So using only 2 passive skills, she actually has quite a big pet army with her. Moving on to the Monk. One big concern in the beta is survivability of the Monk. We've been working on, particularly during the early levels. During our internal testing, we actually find the Monk has a lot of good survivability later in the game, but that's only when a lot of the skills have unlocked. Early on, Monks were having a hard time. So we've been doing very targeted, focused changes on certain of early combo skills, like Fists of Thunder, does a small bit of knockback on the 3rd hit now. Long reach is slightly longer in its reach. All these sorts of things are just kind of micro adjustments that help improve the survivability of the Monk. The other area that we've been looking at is mantras. A lot of players understand that the fundamental concept is that it's a buff that's on yourself and others, but there wasn't any really good decision point as to when you were going to push the button. So for the first 3 seconds after activating your mantra, the effect of the mantra is actually doubled. So for example, if you have a mantra that increases the damage taken by all enemies near you, at the time that you push the button, now the effect of that mantra is doubled, and you can actually unleash some of your high cooldown powers, 7-sided strikes, stuff like that. And finally, we've been taking a hard look at combo attacks, spirit generators. Like I said, we use those terms interchangeably. In this case, we had some players who said they just want to have one spirit generator and they want to spam it all the time. And then we have other players who say, well, actually, I really like the idea of combining the two. And so that's been kind of a delicate balance, trying to support both styles. I mentioned the passive earlier. So we've been really looking at changing the timing, changing the structure, to basically make it possible to combine them, but not mandatory. And finally, with the Demon Hunter. For those of you who don't know, the Demon Hunter is based around a dual resource system of both hatred and discipline. Hatred is an offensive resource, and discipline is a tactical resource. We're moving over to a system of using both hatred generators and hatred spenders. The idea is that really in the beta, you're always out of hatred. You're like shooting, you use up all your hatred, and then all of a sudden now you have to use your normal attack again. And that just wasn't very fun. So now we've divided up all the hatred skills. Some of them generate hatred. Those tend to be more utility-oriented skills or plinking skills. And then we have hatred spenders. These tend to be your big bombs or have extremely strong effects. Another area that we've been looking at for the Demon Hunter is snares. The Demon Hunter is a ranged class, and we really wanted to make sure the Demon Hunter had tools to keep enemies at range. We considered adding additional root, and we've used that in small amounts, but we didn't want to give the Demon Hunter too much stun. That's not really part of her kit. So in this case, we've strengthened all of her snares. Just like a couple percentage points, but it actually makes a huge difference, and when you're actually playing, you can really keep those enemies at bay. Finally, we've been cranking up the awesome on all of the classes. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes we're really happy with the mechanic and how something's playing out. Maybe we like the mechanics and the numbers of how our skill works, but for whatever reason, it's not delivering on the visceral fantasy. And so we've been working a lot with our technical art department to basically amp up the visuals, amp up the feel, amp up the effects, so that the skill still functions mechanically the way we want, but has a lot more appeal.
Are you guys ready to talk about awesome? You want to hear about awesome? That's all I care about.
Awesome is awesome.
Let's get these words off the screen. Oh, there's more words. Okay, so kick-ass gameplay is more than just a great idea or a great mechanic. Really, to be pushed in the stratosphere of pure awesome takes a synthesis of the two. So today I'm going to walk you guys through a mausoleum of ideas that didn't quite make the cut and the things we've done to give them a spark. First up is a monk. So one of the cool things that came out of our brainstorming sessions was we wanted the monk to incorporate some kind of temple aesthetic into his skills. And we prototyped something here which is pretty awesome. It's basically the monk summons a huge temple and collapses it on his enemies, which is totally sweet. I think it's sweet. But it has some gameplay issues. It's too confusing. Each pillar requires a click. It takes up a lot of visual space on the screen, so we simplified it. Here we go. I'm going to cast it on a spider. Oh, there it is. All right, so basically it explodes automatically. It's a lot easier to play, simpler to use, easier to understand. Doesn't take up as much space, but still kind of gets through some of that temple aesthetic that we were going for. So next up is the Demon Hunter. We knew that we wanted some kind of companion for the Demon Hunter, and there's a lot of ideas about what that could be. You know, a raven, which I think is the unruined version of a skill, is definitely one of them. Maybe a wolf. But we also tried some crazier ideas, like a floating skull. I don't know. Whose skull is that? It's friggin' huge. I guess he bites enemies. That's a bit magical. It doesn't really seem to work. We also tried a floating sword. I love floating swords. They're awesome. But on a Demon Hunter, it doesn't really seem to work. You know, it's kind of more arcane. I could see a wizard having a floating sword that floats around and like smashes enemies. So we replaced it. We went with something a little more basic, a little bit more corporeal. We went with like a bat. I guess he bites enemies and like sucks their blood for you or something. I mean, it's pretty sweet. It's got some shadow stuff on him too, so it's a little bit more in the physical realm. It's something I would expect a Demon Hunter to have following him around, slaying the allies of hell. We also gave him something a little cute. I love these little guys. Oh, little ferrets. That's awesome. I'm going to call that one Bitey. I love ferrets. So some ideas are just awesome right off the bat. They go in the game, they're totally sweet, and you don't really have to do much to them. This is called Call of the Ancients, which summons the Ancients from Diablo 2 to come in and slay enemies on the battlefield for you. You love it, right? I love it too. When I first joined the project, Julian Love described it to me, and I was so excited to just flip my desk over. Pencils and everything were just going everywhere. So, love this skill. You know, it's not just hero skills that need to be awesome, it's also monsters. I mean, monsters have got to be awesome, so you feel more awesome for slaying them. So, first up is the Goatman Shaman. Picture here, you're going to kind of see that he has a lightning shield, which he casts on himself, and when you hit him when he has a lightning shield on, it does damage to you, it returns damage. It's a great mechanic, it's a great idea, but if a shaman could really only do one thing, what would he do? When I imagine myself as a shaman, I think, fury of the elements, savage, bestial, chaotic, smothering my enemies in an avalanche of frost, consigned to an icy grave. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, hit him with the frost. Oh, you died. It's an upgrade, it's more awesome, I don't know. Alright, so, another monster we have, this guy shows up in Act 2. He's a rockworm. He's definitely not inspired by a desert-themed sci-fi universe at all. So get that idea out of your heads. Don't even think about it. So this is our first implementation, which is pretty cool. He has a cool intro, but he's kind of like a lot of other monsters we have. So we wanted to spice it up. So now what he does, still bursts out of the ground, but if you're unlucky enough, he's actually going to catch you and eat you. Yeah! Spits you out. That's what I'm talking about. That gets my blood boiling. All right. GG, guys. That's all I got.
Ow. All right. So we've talked about, some skills. We've talked about some items. We've talked about the auction house. Let's talk about all the stuff that's going to kill you. So there's 4 difficulty levels in Diablo 3. Normal, Nightmare, Hell, and Inferno. You progress through those in a kind of linear order. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. Well, more about normal and then more about Inferno. So normal. This is really the beginning of the game. It's Act 1 is kind of our tutorial. One of the things that at Blizzard is our general philosophies is we don't like kind of standalone tutorials very much. We don't like, showing up and having like somebody show up and give you a wall of text that you have to read. We just want you to go kill stuff. We want you to learn how to play the game by playing it. So as a result, kind of the early part of Act 1 is pretty easy. So monsters have really low awareness. They're not very aggressive. They won't really kind of attack you very, very kind of seriously. They don't attack very fast. They have a tendency to stand around. They're a little ADD. They have really, really limited abilities, especially in Act 1. Like, it's really uncommon to see even a ranged monster in the first act. So each act is really designed to layer on more challenges. And we literally kind of bucketed all our monsters into different categories, like ranged and kind of proximity AoE and distance AoE and area denial and all these different abilities that they can do. And then we kind of gave them a rank score of what we thought was most difficult and kind of progressed those through all the difficulties. So in the later acts, you get into kind of more responsive monsters that are much more aggressive, much faster, and also have a whole bunch of new abilities that they come after you with. Oh. Who put that there? What does it mean? So, yes, what does it mean? It wasn't a double, though. It was just a single. It doesn't mean anything. This is the feedback we get. Normal's too easy. We get this from the beta feedback. We get this internally. I have people come to me every day and say, yeah, we know, it's early in the game. It's supposed to be easy. But you don't understand, dude. It's way too easy. I remember Diablo 2, and Diablo 2 was not this easy. You're wrong. This is Diablo 2. Yeah. I think she's going to get hit in a second. Oh, no, he missed. Oh, she got hit. Okay. Oh, she took some damage. I think she's going to be okay, though. So, this is on purpose. Because early on, I know we're awesome. We're great at games. And because of that, if you're hardcore like we are, this stuff's too easy for you. But it doesn't really matter because, those of you who are in the beta, you're kind of trapped in the really low, kind of easy content. But you're going to blow past this so quick and get into the other difficulties. And, we're going to talk about that a little today. Our challenge as game developers is to try and make the game approachable for casual players, but still interesting for serious gamers, and build a game that's got depth. There's a really important point here. Hardcore games for everyone is what Blizzard does. It's what we've always done. So one of the things that people say to us is the game feels really, really easy in the early game. Are you just making the game for casual players now? And we say, no, we're making the early game for casual players because we want to turn them into hardcore players. And because we do that is why we have so many wonderful people here today. And that's what we're going to keep doing. Thank you. That being said, I'm sure some of you are going, yeah, but come on, is it really hard? Like, how hard is it? It's not really hard, is it? You got soft. It's not that hard. Well, you're not going to believe anything I say. I'm going to be like, yeah, it's super hard, whatever. So one of the things we asked some of the guys on the team to do, we got a whole bunch of people on the team who are playing the harder difficulties now, and we've asked them to, do a little bit of a testimonial so you guys can see how hard the game really is.
So you've got normal difficulty, you've got nightmare, hell, and inferno.
Normal mode was pretty casual. It was very fun, you're one-clicking, having laughs. Once you get into nightmare mode, it starts kind of turning into all business. Like, whoa, like that thing just killed me. The game really starts, for me anyway, at nightmare.
Once you go into hell difficulty, it starts getting really hard. And then you beat that, and you thought that was hard. And then you get to inferno, and you just have a whole new set of challenges. That first rare monster pack is basically going to own you. You really have to watch your defensive stats. And at the same time, you're trying to build up your magic find. And it's hard because you have to it's a fine balance.
You're going to really need to use your gems and your enchants to really boost up your defense just to survive and not get one-shotted.
Sometimes just the AoE damage will almost kill you instantly.
The whole thing's about surviving. You're not going to do any good to anybody dead.
When you just rush into a boss in Nightmare and above, they will kill you so quick.
Man, the biggest drop I want is gold. We spent so much money on repairs.
A group of us probably spent a good hour wiping on a single boss.
But you really got to play as a team in the later difficulties.
The way the game's tuned right now, people have no idea what they're getting themselves into.
People of the world, you've played this much of normal, which is this much of farming level. When you get to Nightmare and Hell and Inferno, you will get your asses kicked, we promise.
I don't know what's doing that. I'm doing it somehow. Power of my mind, I guess. So higher difficulties, what are those all about? What are we going to do there? How are they going to be different than the normal difficulty? And that's what I'm going to tell you. So Nightmare, Hell, Inferno, these are our higher difficulties. A lot of the things we focus on in these higher difficulties is things that we can do to add depth to the game. So new item affixes. So one of the things that we found is that the Diablo item system is pretty dense. It's a pretty hardcore system. And so we've actually decided to go ahead and pull a lot of the item affixes that say don't matter that much in normal difficulty and just push them to the higher difficulties and not even bother in normal. I mean, a lot of you probably remember Diablo 2 and you'd get, resistance items gear in normal difficulty and you didn't even care because resistance is in normal difficulty. It's not that hard to stay alive in normal. So those are the kinds of affixes that we've pushed up. And by pushing those kind of out of normal difficulty, what we do is we introduce new attributes in higher difficulties, which adds a lot of depth to how you build your character and really increases the item game. So one of the other things we do is focus a lot on rares and champions. Rares and champions are basically randomized monsters. We can take kind of any monster in the game and then we have a bunch of different powers that we give to them that get kind of randomly assigned. So, I think I went too fast. So, rares and champions early in the game, they've got kind of 2 powers in normal difficulty. In Nightmare, they can get up to 3 powers, and in Hell and Inferno, they can get up to 4 powers. And we also have a whole bunch of powers that don't even start showing up till you get past normal difficulty. And a lot of these powers really introduce new mechanics. So, and this is probably the best example when people ask us how much have you really built the game for the higher difficulties. 70% of the items in the game don't even show up until past normal difficulty. So these are some examples of just some of the high-end gear that you can get in some of the higher difficulties. So Inferno, this is our new difficulty that we announced a few months back. It's basically a maximum level difficulty. Once you reach maximum level, you can go to Inferno, and it's meant to be content that's always challenging, that you can never truly out-level. So we get this question all the time, can I solo Inferno? And the answer is yes, you can solo Inferno. And the reason for that is that we've always viewed Diablo as a cooperative game for fun. We don't require you to do cooperative play to get into the content. And I'll get into why in a little bit. We're also doing multiple tiers of items in Inferno. So tiers is really kind of a term that's not typically used with Diablo games, but it's more of a WoW term, but it's kind of an easy kind of transfer of ideas. Essentially, there's multiple tiers of items that appear in Inferno that are increasingly more rare. So the idea is once you get into Inferno, that first tier of new items you'll start seeing more regularly, but that second and final tier are much, much harder to get. And so it really increases the depth of the item game at that level. So, and rares and champions are really going to be the best loot in the game. And one of the things that we're trying to avoid in Diablo 3 is boss runs were fun in Diablo 2, but they got monotonous after a while. So we're really trying to find ways to get you to focus on randomized content as the way to get the best loot. And this is going to be an ongoing problem, something we're going to continue to look at even after Diablo 3 ships, because we do think that there's going to be some optimal paths within the game, but those are things that we want to fix so that it's really fun to kind of go and do a broad array of content to get the best loot. So, and then your kind of excess loot and gold, it's all going to get funneled back into crafting and item enhancing, which we talked about earlier. So, and crazy builds. So this is one of the big things that we want people to do, not just throughout the game, but definitely in Inferno. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. What does crazy builds mean? Well, WoW really focuses on optimal builds, making the absolute best character that you can make. But Diablo has no guild to answer to, no raids, and no roles to perfect. And these are important facts to kind of realize about Diablo because it changes the nature of how you play the Diablo game. For us, Diablo's co-op is optional. It's something for fun. And our point here is that when people talk to us, they talk to us all the time and they'll say, I did the math, and it seems like if you take this ability with a two-hander, that's like the best combination. If you ever take that ability, you're always going to take a two-hander forever. And we say, well, yeah, probably, but if you take this other ability, you'll dual wield, and that's okay. Both builds are viable. And so a lot of the times people will talk to us about optimal builds, and we'll turn around and say, yeah, there might be some optimal builds, but we're really interested in all the viable builds that are out there. So here's an example. People ask all the time, can you make a petless witch doctor? And absolutely you can make a petless witch doctor. Here's a petless witch doctor. I think this is hell difficulty, like late. Essentially, Witch Doctor uses a series of high defense attributes as well as Grasp of the Dead and Spirit Walk. These are really defensive abilities to be able to make a build that just doesn't need to use pets. This is kind of an unusual build for a Witch Doctor, but it's completely viable. So here's my favorite, Melee Wizard. I like to hit things. It's a personal flaw or strength, depending on your view on hitting things. The wizard basically can do this by using a lot of kind of up-close AoE abilities, some really strong defensive abilities like Diamond Skin, to essentially make a character that can be up-close and personal. And that's, again, not a common build for a wizard, but a viable one. So why? Why viable over optimal? Why are we even talking about this? So Diablo has tons and tons of customization. We did the math on the new skill systems with the combination of passives and runes. And we threw a crazy number out a few years back of like 69 billion. We're really more in the area of 2.8 trillion. Trillion? Trillion. Yeah. Trillion builds. So that's a lot of builds. And why? Why so many builds? Because customization is self-expression. And if you have to build a character to be perfectly optimized, that's not really going to allow you to customize that character. So our job is to make sure that, while there might be some best builds, there's tons and tons of viable ones. It's totally okay for there to be best builds. It's totally okay for someone to go, you know what, I made this barbarian and he's got like 0.5% more damage than any other build you can possibly make. And you know what, there's nothing wrong with that unless that number becomes, this barbarian's like 50% more powerful. So if we can get enough builds into that range of these are all viable, they can play at the max level, it means you can play the character you want to play at max level and not be beholden to anyone. So what we say is go out, have fun, be free, and make the Diablo character you want to make. All right, so we're almost done here. A little bit of beta feedback. We really wanted to show how your feedback has directly impacted the development of Diablo 3. So there's way too many examples to kind of come up with of the ways that the feedback we've gotten from all of you has made the game better. So we just kind of picked some top 3. So the first one's a skill system. This is becoming more and more common. Watching people play basically while their skill system UI is sitting open. And why? Because we let them swap out whenever they want. And we thought that was cool because we wanted people to experiment with their builds, but what we didn't want was for people to literally actively in combat be switching skills in and out. It's just not a fun experience. We allowed that in combat. It's not fun. And the other thing we don't like about it is it makes you feel less committed to your build. You don't feel like you have a character build. You just feel like you have this UI for skill swapping that you're constantly using. So our solution is we're focusing on trying to do an in-town swap. So we're going to have an item that you're going to go to in town that is required so you can swap. And you can go to that and swap it whenever you want, but once you leave town, you're restricted and your build is locked. So we've got this implemented internally right now. It's probably going to go out in the next patch of the beta. We're not sure about it. It's better in some ways. In some ways, it kind of sucks to lose the freedom of being able to swap anywhere. But we feel like if we keep iterating on it, it can probably work. But if it doesn't, our alternate solution is going to be to focus on something more like an out of combat kind of system. It's funny, this idea of being in and out of combat is very much a World of Warcraft idea that doesn't translate really easily to Diablo because our combat pace is much faster. But it's still something we probably could fall back on if the in-town thing doesn't work. So followers. Followers are an awesome feature that we announced a little while ago. Characters that can follow you throughout the world and help you, and you can customize. One of the things we decided was that they weren't really going to be viable past normal difficulty. And we did that because we really saw them as more of a single-player feature, more of a story feature. The thing is, we got a lot of feedback that many of you didn't like this. Matter of fact, a whole lot of you didn't like it. So we changed our minds. So followers are now going to be in-game viable, so you'll be able to use them to customize your build and bring them with you out in the world. So this is a fun one. We posted our items up on the Blizzard website a while ago, and a lot of that stuff is really temp, so take it with a grain of salt. Like, we're really still very much in itemization's one of the kind of last things you get kind of hardcore on. So a lot of that stuff is temp, but this is one of them, the Ring of the Zodiac. We posted up this data, and that's what was out there, and everyone's like, WTF, that's not a Ring of the Zodiac. We played Diablo 2, we know what a Ring of the Zodiac is, and that ain't it. So, fixed. So, thank you. We'll try and keep on anything we bring back. We'll be a little better about that. All right. So we don't have a lot of time for questions. I want to let you all know that tomorrow at 10 a.m. on the panels discussion stage, we have a lore panel. They're going to be showing some new environments and talking about a lot of new story stuff and some factions. So if you have a chance to go to it, I definitely recommend it. Also, at 11:30, we're going to be back on the main stage for a full hour of Q&A. So if you don't get your question asked today, please come back tomorrow at 11:30. Thank you.
I don't know. Where are you going? Come back here. There you go. I think we only have time for one, is what the thing in my ear is telling me. So this gentleman stepped up.
So Chad's the villain. He's the reason we can only have one question.
No. My name is Jay. Here we go.
Are the amount of free postings for cash items on the auction house going to be limited by a day-to-day basis, weekly or monthly?
It's going to be weekly. We don't know exactly how many we're going to do, but it should be enough to be able to do a good amount every week, and then it'll refresh on a day that someone who is not me will choose.
Thank you. All right. Guys, I'm sorry. That's it. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for attending the Diablo 3 Gameplay and Auction House panel. Up next, contests beginning at 6 o'clock.
All right, that wraps up the Diablo 3 Gameplay and Auction House panel, but these are some of the amazing costumes we're going to see later tonight with the costume contest. Always a highlight of BlizzCon, and earlier today, Adrian Curry got to meet up with the host of that contest, Jay Moore, to hear what we can expect from him tonight and some of these amazing costumes. Over to you, Adrian. What's going on?
Thanks, guys. I'm hanging out backstage with the badass and awesome Jay Moore.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be you.
All right, that's me. We got a big costume contest coming up. Are you going to dress up?
This is the first con I've ever been to out of costume, and I'm kind of sad. I totally will next year, I promise.
How do I know you're not like some kid from Bakersfield dressed as Adrienne Curry?
Well, because I'll walk around with a security, guard thing going on. Because sometimes people are like, oh, hey, what's up?
No, they're not.
But let's segue out of the costume contest.
Watch me cheat out.
Cheat?
Paging Mr. Herman.
Nice.
Totally natural.
Dude. Tell me about the dance contest last year where the undead dude snapped his kneecaps.
Yeah, there was an undead male from Arizona. He broke his leg just kind of spit, but it didn't get on. No, it didn't get on you though.
I tend to make men drool. It's okay.
Yeah, you're a lovely gal. I mean, if you like girls, if that's your thing. A kid broke his leg dancing, but his dance was just jumping up and down.
And that's how he broke his leg?
Yeah, I looked down, he had like 4 kneecaps. And then but he was also, I think, in the costume contest. Segway! So that's what made it doubly sad, because he had to go to the hospital instead of going into his costume contest.
You know what that's from, dude, right?
What's that?
He probably has been raiding for the last year and a half and hasn't gotten up. And it was like the first time he really jumped around after raiding and forgot that he's not as awesome as his tune.
I like your joke. Do you hear that applause you just got?
Yeah. That was awesome. It wasn't for me.
Hey, it's Direct TV, man.
Yeah.
I have to tell you. Adrienne Curry.
That's
Let's do it tonight.
What are you doing tonight? Costume contest, right?
Yeah, we'll have a good costume contest. I was going to join, but I forgot. I left my blue paint at home. And 2 years ago, a guy came up to me in the hallway and said, Jay Moore, party of the century tonight, bro. Party. And I peeked out my window. He said, meet us at the jacuzzi. There's like 40 guys in denim shorts, and there's like one 92-pound mage in the hot tub.
Oh, no, you don't need to.
No,
I'm very happy you missed out on that party.
I thought of just showing up and getting in the hot tub and just sit facing the jets like it's normal. Like, what's going on? And, see if I could keep my voice without any inflection.
Avoid the mages that weigh that much in jean shorts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jay. Back to you guys.